Hey there, everyone. That sexy nerd is back again. And yeah, you know what? I'm reviewing this episode because think story. I know I haven't started at like I did for House of the Dragon, but guess what? Anyway, so what can I say? This last what can I say? This last episode, amazing. Like probably my favorite episode of the season so far. It really is. Like I honestly think it's better than a long time with Bill and Frank, which was a phenomenal episode. But this is what they got from the game, and I'm just so happy for it. They made David even worse. I didn't even know that was possible, and I just adored the episode. I can't stop watching it, honestly. And honestly, in celebration for this episode going so well, I'm just gonna watch Think Story here because and for the next episode too, probably as well. But hey, you guys like it? Subscribe and watch my other videos and but yeah, let's not talk about it anymore. Let's just watch the episode. He's gonna say a lot, so there. So please smash that like button if you want to see more sexy and nerdy content, and subscribe if you think I deserve it. Let's do this thing, y'all.
Delicious meals, a friendly pastor, and...
Hi, welcome to Chili's.
One eternity later.
He's already dead.
First of all, huge thanks to all of you for helping me reach 600k subscribers. I am one step closer to my parents loving me. In this episode, we'll be taking a deep dive into episode 8, its connection to the game, and details you missed. Warning, there will be only some minor spoilers in this video. But before we sink our teeth into it, make sure you give a like and subscribe. It's the only thing keeping me going through these harsh winter months. We open on the resort town of Silver Lake, and trust me, you'll want to visit. It's some of the greatest food I've ever had. By this abandoned post office, we can make out the area code 81303, which is the code for Durango, Colorado, a popular ski resort destination. Just like in the game, we get these gorgeous vistas of pine trees. It's a location that looks beautiful, but is terribly inhospitable in the winter months. And you know, when an episode begins with a Bible quote from the book of Revelation, it can't be going anywhere good. In fact, David here is reciting verse 21, which a lot of you might remember from Titanic.
And God shall wipe away all the tears from their eyes, and there shall be no more death.
So off to a great
Wow, so that wasn't a joke? I heard that those were like Titanic quotes. I haven't watched Titanic that much, I guess. I don't know, and I remember all this stuff. Oh, I'm so disappointed in myself.
start. This particular verse basically depicts the end of days, and that when the earth is gone, there will be no more death or sorrow. Because how can there be death and sorrow when everyone's already dead, or in this case, gone to heaven? And boy, I've never seen a more sad-looking group of people at a steakhouse since my vegan girlfriend didn't let my family order meat at Outback. I found this ring David wears really interesting. He doesn't wear one in the game, and seeing how he's this religious figure, it made me think of the ring the Pope wears on that same exact finger. In fact, many of the characters in David's flock have biblical names. Josiah means God supports and heals. Timothy, one who honors God. And this one is super interesting, James, meaning supplanter. And as we'll see throughout the episode, James questions David's leadership. What's really cool here is the actor who plays James is none other than Troy Baker, the actor who portrayed Joel in the game. One big difference from the game is the show's emphasis on David and religion. In the game, David barely mentions God, and the only thing that really hints at the town being religious is that same "when we are in need, he shall provide" banner. I quite enjoyed this change as it made David a more rounded character and contextualized his motivation behind the veil of Christianity.
And they just use that thing. Do you see what I mean about this guy being a fantastic director? Look what he did. He just pulled one little part out of all that, and he made the character even more interesting. I don't know what people are going to say. I don't care. I think he's even more interesting than he was in the game.
He also fancies himself a protector like Joel, but this type of protection is predatory. More on that in a bit. Among the crowd is a young girl named Hannah, a Hebrew name meaning favor or grace. It's kind of ironic since grace surely hasn't befallen her or her family. She's just lost her father Alec, who we find out was the man Joel killed at the end of episode 6 at the University of Eastern Colorado. She's wanting to know when they can bury his body, and check out this sly glance David gives James here. I'll probably be posting a separate video on this, but this glance suggests Alec's body was taken back and put into the very soup his own daughter will later eat. That's why David says it's too cold out and they can't bury him just yet. There's something also really metaphoric about this church service taking place at a steakhouse. Instead of a house of God, it's a house of Todd, Todd's steakhouse that is, a place where animals are butchered and eaten. David says even we humans are animals in a sense.
You're an animal.
Well, yes, we all are. That's sort of the point.
He too will literally be butchered and his flesh burned as Todd's steakhouse goes up in flames, a terribly ironic end for a man who cooked and ate his own people. James explains the dire situation. They only have about a week or two of meat left. Later in the episode, we find out there are only a few members who know that human pieces have been put into the food, and it's heavily implied James is one of these people. So when he says they have little meat left, this could theoretically include human flesh. With their food dwindling and Joel on the brink of death, Ellie must venture out in the wild and hunt for food. In episode 6, we saw Joel train her how to shoot, but her skills aren't exactly top-notch. Unlike the game where she successfully captures this rabbit, Ellie takes Joel's rifle instead of her bow and arrow. In both versions, she injures a deer, which leads her to a confrontation between her and David. Ellie's fascination with guns has been a recurring motif throughout the season. A gun gives her power, that thing she'd had to rely on others like Riley, Marlene, and Joel for most of her life. And she shows off her skills with firearms by removing rounds from the rifles using only one hand. Aside from the change in weapons, the game and show versions are almost identical.
Any sudden moves, I put one right between your eyes. Ditto for Buddy Boy. Any sudden...
You know, I just had an idea. I'm sorry to interrupt, but what if they continue the story, what if they actually have Ellie like struggling to maintain the bow? That could be amazing, you know?
moves and I put one right between your eyes. Ditto for Buddy Boy over there.
We can trade you for some of the deer. We have, what do you need? We have boots.
Medicine?
Weapons, ammo, clothes.
Medicine.
In exchange for medicine, penicillin to combat Joel's infection to be exact, Ellie will give them half of Bambi, but in order to get it, James must make the 4-mile round trip to town and back, leaving David and Ellie to size each other up.
And for what it's worth, there's room for you in our group, if you want.
You're inviting me to your hunger club?
David informs her that he's the leader of a group of men, women, and children down by the resort, and even though he's a preacher, he says they're not a cult. Ellie can't believe anyone still believes in God, especially after what happened to the world. What kind of loving God would allow that? But to her surprise, David found God after the apocalypse. In fact, prior to the pandemic, he was just a second-grade teacher, something which is extra concerning considering what he'll later try to do to Ellie. David wants her to come with him and join their group, which I can't help but think is an act of proselytizing, or the act of trying to convert someone from one religion or belief to another. Although never explicitly stated, Ellie seems to be atheist or agnostic. When she's asked about heaven in the game, she says,
I'd like to believe it.
But you don't.
I guess not.
Not mentioned in the game is David's origin. According to the show, he was in the Pittsburgh quarantine zone when it fell in 2017. You'll remember the Pittsburgh segment of the game was swapped for Kansas City in the show. Since 2017, David and his flock have traveled further and further west due to frequent attacks by raiders. We saw a few of these raiders attempt to take over Bill and Frank's compound in episode 3. If only they knew raiders are weak to remote control operated flamethrowers. Now luck has not been on David and his crew's side as food dwindles.
There's no such thing as luck. I believe everything happens for a reason.
No such thing as luck. Now, you see, I believe that everything happens for a reason.
And just like in the game, David reveals he knows Ellie's been lying about being part of a large group. That's because it was his own men that attacked them at the university back in episode 6.
To be fair, though, how the hell did they know what they look like? Pretty interesting question, huh?
Crazy man was traveling with a little girl.
The game departs drastically from the show here when the two come under attack from infected. I'm actually a bit disappointed they didn't try to adapt this moment because it gives us a really important beat where David saves Ellie's life by shooting an infected with a gun he had hidden this whole time. It basically shows that David could have killed Ellie at almost any moment, but chose not to do so. Now at this point in the game, or show for that matter, we don't know David is a cannibal, so it adds to this mystery of whether or not David and his group are truly good. But more importantly, I just think the show needs more infected. I'm not saying David and Ellie had to go through a wild chase through an abandoned factory where they fight off hordes of infected, including a bloater, but the show could definitely do with more reminders of the infected threat. Their time together also creates a bonding moment between Ellie and David.
I'd say we make a pretty good team.
Something that could have helped with that tension later in the episode when we're wondering if Ellie would join David's side. Alas, both versions have James reappearing holding Ellie at gunpoint, but David lets Ellie go with the medicine, even after she rejects joining him. That's because David is smart. He knows Ellie isn't with a huge group, won't survive for long on her own, and by letting her go, she'll lead them right to Joel, a man who in the game killed many of David's men. Ellie rushes back to Joel's side and injects him with penicillin,
and also more meat. Ugh.
In the game, she stays by his side. Josiah here arrives with a delicious helping of what he claims to be venison. While Hannah's mother Joyce remarks they only have 5 more cans of tomato sauce left. Josiah absolutely has to be in on the cannibal cooking, as it looks like he was the one to chop these pieces up. As I'll mention in my other video, he could knowingly be giving Joyce chunks of her own husband to cook. Just take a look at how shifty his eyes are here when he lies to her about this being venison. Something is definitely going on. The people of Silver Lake enjoy their meal at Todd's Steakhouse, and even though they're all starving, notice that they all wait until Grace to enjoy their meal. Meanwhile, I'd be there getting pissed that my food's gone cold. And what should be a joyous occasion is met with little fanfare as David and James arrive with Ellie's deer. The people have heard a rumor that the man who killed Alec, Hannah's father, is somewhere out there, and David vows to send a group to track him and Ellie at dawn. There will be justice. But Hannah is like, and I kid you not, I audibly gasped when David smacked the shit out of her. No one...
I'll tell you right now, somebody who's never seen the show wasn't even paying attention to that show. We were just talking and the show just happened to be playing. He just smacks the crap out of her and he's like, she's like, what the hell is this? What is this? Like immediately got interested in the show. Made a new fan.
Gets up to stop him. It just goes to show how much of a spell this guy has over these people. Now what David says here is probably the most interesting line in the entire episode.
But the truth is, Hannah, you will always have a father. And you will show him respect when he's speaking.
You could interpret this line in one of 2 ways. First, that David will be sort of this surrogate father for Hannah now that her real father is gone, or 2, that father here refers to God. In Christian theology, the word father is often meant to represent God, and if David is telling her to show respect when he's speaking, it hints that David actually believes God is speaking through him. I find this a much creepier interpretation. Now this freaked me.
See what I mean? See what I mean?
Out. This extra here looks a lot like Ashley Johnson, the actress who portrayed Ellie in the game. Yeah, I know I'm probably crazy, but anyways, it's probably not her considering in the season preview we know she'll make an appearance in the finale, and they wouldn't give her a non-speaking extra role unless it was a fun Easter egg and she happened to be on set that day. David's prayer refers to the living bread, a reference to the act of communion in which bread is used to symbolize the flesh of Christ, ironic since they're all likely eating human flesh. David's people here eat voraciously, all of them starving, and I found it interesting that David here is the only one who's really taking his time with the meal. He definitely isn't giving off that starved vibe. James also eats slowly, but that's because he knows they're eating human flesh. Just watch him look over at Hannah, Joyce, and David. It would be super messed up if he knew Anna was eating her own father. Back at Ellie's hideout, we can see her bathed in this light from the window. The Ellie bathed in light imagery has been a common motif throughout the season, from when we first see her in episode 1 1 and also waking up in episode 2. It harkens back to the Firefly motto, when you're lost in the darkness, look for the light. Ellie is the light, that hope for humanity. Joel's wound is healing and Ellie gives him some medicine. She even takes a moment to feed their horse. But a group of startled birds alert Ellie to David and his men. Now James here questions David's decision to bring Ellie in alive. After all, she'd just be one more mouth to feed. But things get more heated when James suggests Ellie dying out here is God's will. David stops in his tracks and there's this beat of tension between the two men. No words are said, but by questioning David, James is questioning God's will, and he's quick to back down when sized up by David. Ellie rushes back to Joel and gives him his knife. The dude can barely keep his eyes open. There's not much she can do for him other than try to hide the entrance to the basement and distract David's men away from the house. Even as Ellie shoots at them to draw them away, David yells out that he wants her alive. As we'll later find out, he has bigger, creepier plans for her. James ends up shooting the horse, causing Ellie to dismount and almost fall unconscious. In the game, this plays out much differently. While she is knocked off her horse, it leads her on a lengthy escape sequence where we see her sneak through the lakeside resort and its abandoned chalets until she's eventually caught by David. In the show, James is ready to disobey David's order and kill Ellie before he comes and intercedes. These guys should be taking out their vengeance on the person who actually killed their man, so he orders a few of them to hunt Joel down while the horse will be scavenged for additional meals. Josiah here is hot on Joel's tracks, but unbeknownst to him, Joel can hear him creaking upstairs like me trying to get a late night snack. Now here's something I want to pose to you. Did you think Joel's recovery was rushed? He goes from barely being able to keep his eyes open to single-handedly taking down 3 armed men. Let me know in the comments because I'm really conflicted on this one.
It was the same way in the game though. I mean, you can't tell. He literally looks for the guys and he takes out like 15 of them. It's worse in the game, so. I mean, the penicillin must have eventually worked.
Anyway, Josiah gets an absolutely brutal death with a knife to the back of the head. Gory, gory, what a hell of a way to die. Ellie wakes up in a cage that would make Joe Goldberg jealous. Even the cage here looks like it's pulled directly from the game. David has come in the hopes of swaying Ellie to his side. After all, if it weren't for him, the others would have already killed her. For those with a keen eye, you can make out the knives and butchering board in the background, tools used for the butchering of human carcasses. The game pulls no punches when Ellie is initially interrogated by David. In fact, he's chopping up a human body when she wakes up. The show holds on the cannibal reveal a bit longer, allowing David to at least attempt to sway Ellie to his side. He says that Ellie's life with Joel is coming to an end, and he's offering her a new beginning. This ties into the Bible quote from the beginning in which God ended humanity and led the righteous to a new beginning in heaven. So Ellie must face reality. If she can't trust David, she will end up alone. Joel's apparently been injected with steroids because he's managed to tie up 2 of David's men, Marco and Timothy, in an attempt to interrogate them as to Ellie's whereabouts. This scene plays out almost identical to the game, right down to the very stab to the knee. Similar to what he had Marlon and Florence do in episode 6, Joel makes the men point on the map where Ellie had been taken to make sure they aren't lying to him. Turns out she's at a place called Silver Lake, not the name of a town, but of a resort. And it's kind of ironic that these guys have undertaken eating humans as a last resort at a resort. There is one line of dialogue here that isn't in the show, which acknowledges the men know David is interested in Ellie.
She's alive. She's David's newest pet.
I can see why they cut this from the show, as it implies David had multiple young girls he had as pets in the past. But the thing I take away most from this scene is just how violent Joel is, especially when it comes to protecting those he loves. He doesn't have to kill these guys, but does so anyway. He's not taking any chances in this unforgiving world. Meanwhile, Ellie's wasting no time looking for a way to escape, and as she tries loosening the bolts to her cage, makes a chilling discovery: a human ear. So when David comes in with a warm meal, she's like,
"No thanks, I'm full."
Understandably, Ellie's like, "You people are f***ed, but what were they supposed to do? Starve?" Ellie should know more than anyone that sometimes terrible things must be done in order to survive. Joel, for example, has killed multiple people to defend Ellie, and David knows that if he were to give Ellie a knife right now and let her out, she'd kill him without hesitation. Just like Kwong saw something in Ellie in episode 7, so too does David. Ellie is a natural leader, smart, and most of all, loyal. This is something he's looking for in a partner, and as we'll see shortly, the partnership he's intending makes this super creepy. Like himself, David believes Ellie has a violent heart because he himself possessed one.
I've always had a violent heart, but then the world ended and I was shown the truth.
You might think the truth here is a reference to him converting to Christianity, but in a subversion of our expectations, it's actually his belief in the cordyceps infection. The pandemic taught him that the cordyceps aren't evil, but merely doing what they need to do in order to survive, meaning feed, multiply, protect, and secure a future by violence if necessary. For David, the cordyceps pandemic gave him the justification for all his actions both in the past and present. Check out this list of things we know about him and see if you can guess where I'm going with this. We know that prior to the infection he had a quote-unquote violent heart. We know he taught school children, that he's beaten children, and we know he's had an infatuation with Ellie, a 13-year-old, and that this infatuation manifests in a sexual assault. Was David a child abuser, even as he was a school teacher in Pittsburgh before the pandemic? In his messed up brain, the cordyceps gave him a justification for this abuse. Look, the cordyceps take what they want in order to survive, by violence if necessary, because it's vital for their survival. Therefore, David can do what he wants because it's vital for his. It's a bit confusing, but hell, the minds of psychopaths often are. And here's the icing on the cake. He says the cordyceps do this because it loves. Yes, love will be the justification for him doing terrible things.
Don't be afraid. There's no fear in love.
But why is David telling Ellie all of this? Well, he says she can handle it, while the others need a sham figure like God to give them strength. For him, he sees Ellie as an equal, a fellow shepherd to lead their people. But that still leaves Joel. David assures Ellie he'll let Joel go if Ellie decides to stay and become his partner.
Imagine the life we could build.
Why don't you have a seat there and get comfortable for that?
And for a moment, we aren't sure what Ellie's going to do. That is, of course, if you haven't played the game. She destroys the shit out of his finger. And in a fun callback to never telling him his name, she finally says,
Tell them that Ellie is a little girl who broke her fucking finger!
Tell Sassy I wanted to know it was me.
David doesn't take too kindly to the fact he's just had his finger broken, saying,
How did you put it? Tiny little pieces?
A reference to her being chopped up and put in their next meal. Meanwhile, Joel trudges through the snow towards Silver Lake, breaking into a tackle and bait shop where he finds Ellie's bag, so he must be on the right track. And poor Callus the horse is unfortunately here as well. In the game, he finds his way into the back of a butcher shop where he too discovers these hanging bodies. Meanwhile, David and James grab Ellie to turn her into a delectable stew, but she bites David's hand, a moment that doesn't happen in the game, but she definitely gives David a reason to pause when Ellie reveals that she's infected. They pull up her...
What are you talking about? It doesn't happen in the game. Yes, it does. She does bite him. She says the same thing, like, you're infected too. Did you not play the... What the hell?
Her sleeve, and David doesn't believe it's possible. She would have already turned, and Ellie uses this opportunity to grab the butcher knife and axe down James before making her escape. There's something very meta about the new Ellie killing the actor who played Joel. In the game, Ellie's prison isn't connected to the steakhouse, so we get this big sequence where we follow her as she sneaks her way through the resort town. And as we're making our way through Silver Lake, we can hear just how disgruntled some of these men are with David's leadership. It's hard to make out here, but some of the men want to put his leadership up to a vote. Ellie's trek will eventually lead her to the outside of the steakhouse, where we can see the ruined T-O-N-D from the Todd Steakhouse signage outdoors. Back in the show, Ellie attempts to escape, but all the doors to the steakhouse are locked. David searches for her, and she does what any rational person would do, throw a burning piece of wood at him. I thought the game version was a little bit more believable here, as the fire starts by an oil lamp falling over. David believes Ellie isn't infected, because no one infected would fight that hard to stay alive, so he's curious to know how she did it. And he's made the decision not to kill her.
I've decided you do need a father, so I'm gonna keep you. And I'm gonna teach you.
Super creepy. The game treats this segment like a boss fight, in which Ellie uses stealth to navigate around the restaurant while ambushing David with carefully placed knife attacks, eventually culminating in an attack which quickly cuts to Joel in his quest to find her. This leads him to that meat locker, but we also find a curious piece of paper here which denotes the pounds of human flesh they've accumulated each month.
You know, I like to imagine in some alternate universe that Joel caught up to him before this whole thing, and you know, just right about he killed, he done to Ellie. Imagine how badly he would have killed him if he had found him that way. Oh, so cathartic. Oof.
Then cut back to Ellie struggling to escape David and lunging for her butcher knife, but the show takes David's motivation here to a much darker place, implying that he's about to rape her. He says things like he likes it when she fights and that there's no fear in love as he reaches for his pants. Am I the only one still paying attention to this giant-ass fire behind them? Like, I'm not exactly sure how much love this guy was planning to do with a fire bigger than Andrew Tate's career right now. The game doesn't really lean into David's sexual desires, it's just crazy David trying to kill Ellie. But David's death is way more gruesome in the show. In fact, I counted 22 stabs before Ellie stops butchering his face compared to the 10 in the game. And Ellie's attack here feels as though she's possessed. It reminded me of when Joel lost control attacking the Fedra soldier in episode 1. In terms of the show, this is Ellie's first verified kill of a human. In the game, she's already killed a dude in Pittsburgh and even one while escaping David on horseback. In the show, we know from episode 4 she shot a man, but it was Joel that finished him off, and we aren't exactly sure what happened to Riley after she was bitten. Did Ellie finish her off as she turned? In episode 4, Ellie tells Joel that shooting the man wasn't the first time that she shot someone, so it's entirely possible Ellie's first kill was Riley, but again we don't know if this is true or how infected Riley was when it happened. The game actually has Joel stepping in to stop her as
she got bit on the hand, so she probably turned within 12, no, not 12 hours, like either, no, it's like 8 to 12 hours, I think it was. That's what the sign said at the beginning.
She kills David, while the show has her outside before she's reunited with him. She is insanely traumatized, not wanting to be touched until she sees that it's Joel. Her words are difficult to get out, as Joel tries to calm her, and for the first time in the show, he calls her baby girl, the same thing he called his own daughter Sarah in episode 1.
It's okay, baby girl. Come on, baby girl. Come on, baby girl, I gotta get you.
I love this shot here because we can clearly see the broken watch, a constant reminder of Sarah's death as he embraces Ellie. The two walk off into the distance together, likely off to Salt Lake City, the next step of their journey. The game ends this segment with the burning steakhouse on the knife embedded in David's skull as we cut to spring. So it'll be interesting where the show takes us in the finale. Apparently Ashley Johnson will be making an appearance as Ellie's mother, and if it follows the events of the game, we are in for one hell of an episode. But let me know what you thought about episode 8 in the comments below.
That's so crazy. Yo, I cannot believe, I'm so disappointed now that I didn't use this to watch all of his other episodes. I just love his material. He kept me entertained during all of House of Dragon, and man, next time I won't let another HBO show go without him. But man, like, he really opened my, I didn't even know Ashley Johnson. I've already done episode 9 preview, so I had no idea Ashley Johnson, that was her, but I didn't see her exactly, so I guess I think she's playing her mother, though, but I see. I think I see what they're doing. But, man, this is insane. Just really opened my eyes to the episode in particular, and I really loved that, and it's really great. So not really much more to say. I mean, I think everything's been said. So please smash that like button if you want to see more stuff, nerdy content, and subscribe if you think I deserve it. And I'll see you on the next episode.